as I understand, this is actually an ethics bill. It really does make sure that we don't have backroom deals to put people on the ballot and run as a result of some small group of people in a smoke-filled room making the choice. So I think, to me, more transparency is better.
What's interesting is that I was a slated candidate, similar to Kamala Harris. And I don't understand why it was such a problem for me to try to get on the ballot, but then they go ahead and try to just shove this candidate in our face for president in 2024.
Governor J.B. Pritzker, followed by Leslie Clazo, talking about the slating of candidates. And if you recall, this measure that passed the State House in the matter of 2 days and the governor signing it within 3 days prohibited individuals who did not run in the primary from getting on the November general election ballots. Now, it didn't do this for future elections. It did this in the middle of an election year, and Republicans took that to court in Sangamon County, and it was found unconstitutional. And then you had the Democrats appeal directly to the Illinois Supreme Court. Well, Friday, on a Friday news dump, the Illinois Supreme Court says 2 justices recused themselves. The other 4 couldn't make a decision, so it was deadlocked, and ultimately that led to the Democrats' appeal of the lower court ruling it unconstitutional being tossed. So that's not going to go into effect this year. To react to that is Senate Minority Leader John Curran. He joins us now here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Senator, thanks for taking time with us this morning. You put out a statement saying, yet again, Governor Pritzker has signed an unconstitutional and partisan bill. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, it is amazing just they're constantly looking for more and more power with supermajorities, with every statewide office held by Democrats. They still were trying to game the system, change the rules while candidates were out there collecting signatures, had already been slated following the current law, and they tried to cut it off, and only for legislative offices. And why is that? Because they don't believe voters should have choice. At the end of the day, that's why they gerrymandered the maps. That's why, and it's the most gerrymandered, partisan drawn map in the country, because they don't want voters to actually have choice. So it's just another display of hypocrisy on the part of Governor Pritzker and his legislative Democratic allies. And it's not lost on me, Greg. A couple months later, after they passed that law, when they said party bosses shouldn't be picking candidates, what did they participate in? Party bosses at the DNC selecting their presidential candidate. And not one of them recused themselves to say, out of consistency based upon what we did in Illinois, I'm not going to participate in this. Not at all. They rushed to participate in the party bosses slating the current vice president.
Yeah, and Governor Pritzker, in that clip we played to open the segment, he was asked about this right before the Senate passed it, but he said, this isn't an election bill, it's an ethics bill. And he said that, we shouldn't have people in smoke-filled rooms making the decisions as to who people have choices for. But he signed this bill, and it became law, challenged, found unconstitutional just for this year, though. Is that your understanding that next year or the next election cycle, slating is not going to be a thing?
For legislative districts only, and that's fine. Set the rules before the election cycle starts and then stick to them. And then candidates can follow those rules. Local, political organizations can follow those rules. It is noteworthy that this still only applies to legislative districts. So Governor Pritzker, while he thinks it's an ethics issue, has no problem with slating of candidates for county races or any other type of race. It's just specifically legislative, but that's fine. It's fair to start at the beginning of the process. What we objected to was changing the process, changing the rules in the middle of the election cycle.
Senator, this, of course, is just one of several bills that have been challenged. Governor Pritzker recently signed. Talk about, I guess, some of the other ones that have already been essentially, put on hold as not being enforced. You've got one that deals with crisis pregnancy centers, for instance. Is this showing a pattern of sorts of the Democrat-controlled legislature passing things that courts are saying you can't do this?
it absolutely is a pattern. And this is, again, it's about power. This is not at all about good government or fairness or empowering voters or empowering the citizens of Illinois. It is the opposite. The partisan power, he's the most partisan governor in the country, is constantly on display. Thankfully, we've had some court rulings that have pushed back on the governor's partisan overreach, and I believe that's going to continue. And there's more challenges in the pipeline.
Senate Minority Leader John Curran with us. A couple other things I want to touch base with you on. Of course, last week was the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Big showing, big produced show. We didn't get Beyonce, though. Apparently, that was rumored all throughout the last day. Didn't happen. Your thoughts, your takeaway from the 4 days of Democrats rallying in Chicago?
Well, I mean, look, the governor certainly knows how to throw a party, and it was it was a spectacle on display in Chicago. First and foremost, I took a day to go visit the Chicago police officers that were working overtime to make sure that the city was safe. Everyone visiting the city was safe. They did a tremendous job. So first and foremost, we should really thank law enforcement. And isn't it a great example when law enforcement is supported all the way from the governor to the mayor to every elected official in Chicago, when they're actually supporting their law enforcement officials? What a great, fantastic job that those men and women in police uniforms did for the city. Beyond that, Greg, I got to tell you, I was just amazed at the disconnect between the governor's speech. That's what I found most interesting, and his actual record. He talked about being for lower taxes, and a few short months earlier, he passed $1 billion in tax increases on Illinois, residents and businesses. So it was really a disconnected speech.
Senator, you've also got the election here in 70 some odd days. We just talked about that bill that was found unconstitutional, ultimately saying, hey, there's going to be the possibility of some choice in districts, including the Chicago area, where people didn't run in a primary, but Republicans in those areas did slate candidates. What's the party's plan moving forward? I've talked to several Republicans from the Chicagoland area, and one in particular says, hey, we need the party to put resources into these districts. Is that going to happen?
No, I think the Republican Party right now is in a growth phase, and the city of Chicago, Cook County, this is an area where we are growing more of a presence. We need to. That work is ongoing right now. What you're going to see in future elections is, more resources put into actually getting candidates on the ballot for the primary, rather than using the mechanism that is going to be expiring after this election cycle. So, but absolutely, I represent a portion of Cook County, and that part of my district and the surrounding areas, voters are moving towards us. They have had enough of the constant corruption in Cook County and the city of Chicago, all run by Democrats, and that is pushing them towards the Republican Party. What we have to do is make sure that we continue to operate as a big tent and pull these people in. Don't push them away, pull them in, and that's ongoing.
Talking with Senate Minority Leader John Curran here with America's Talking Network and Illinois in Focus Daily. Finally, you've got veto session after the election. Anything top of mind you think that you guys need to tackle when you head back to Springfield?
Well, I think it's not just going to be veto session, Greg. Obviously, with supermajority Democratic legislatures and a Democratic governor, there's not a lot of bills that actually get vetoed. But I would fully expect we're also going to be back in January in what's historically called a lame duck session. And that is where, in my time, what I would say the worst of the legislative proposals have been jammed through on purely partisan roll calls and with very little sunshine. So, we're getting prepared for fall veto. Nothing really comes top of mind. The budget is going to, obviously, there was a lot done in the budget in terms of, retailers and financial institutions, and those groups are certainly talking to us about some relief from what happened to them in May. I don't know if any of that's going to see the light of day in veto.
Senate Minority Leader John Curran, greatly appreciate you taking the time with us this morning, and we'll connect again in the near future to talk about these and other issues. Be safe out there, and we'll talk soon, all right?
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with us each and every weekday morning. Again, thanks to Leader Curran for joining us. And much more coming up here as you've got Illinois in Focus Daily.